Take a walk with me here because I think I just figured out where the X-Men have been this entire time in our MCU timeline. And side note, where Wanda is too. Now, obviously a huge piece is Spider-Man Brand New Day that's set to come out next month, but with the MCU re-releasing Endgame, we're not gonna be done with the Infinity Stone timeline just yet. But with this theory, we're not just connecting the Infinity Saga to the current phase of the MCU, but also tying in all of the outliers that have been sitting out adrift in the MCU adjacent realm. So this is my No More Mutants theory, because it seems like it's not just 616. X-Men were erased from the entire multiverse, but obviously they exist somewhere because they're in the end credit scene of the Marvels. And then yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, a lot of this is coming from the tour of Peter Parker's apartment that Sony sent me on yesterday, and a box that Marvel sent me with a mouse pad in it that has a map of the world or universe that is incredibly telling, that is going to be important for this theory. And the reason all of this has to tie back to the Infinity Saga is because of what Thanos did, why he did it, and what was explained in Eternals. So basically, by Thanos eradicating half of the universe's population, he stopped our timeline from unraveling and basically put a halt or a kink in the celestial war that is happening around us, because what he did stop the celestial from emerging from Earth's planet. And this is direct reference to Deadpool and Wolverine, the same way we saw timelines unravel and how that can actually be accelerated. Maybe it can be escalated. So then when our Avengers reversed the blip, that re-kicked the Celestial War. The Celestial War is because of the Infinity Stones to begin with. So when Captain Marvel found the first stone, that was actually the beginning of the end, by the people of this universe discovering Infinity Stones and discovering their power. Yes, when they exit outside a specific universe, they become as useless as paperweights. But the thing is that they actually are representations of an actual element, representing these 6 elements that create the multiverse or a universe to begin with. So if a universe were to become too aware of this, they would become too powerful, and it would pose a problem to the people above them in the food chain of power within the MCU. So I put out a theory the other day saying, what if Steve Rogers is collecting Avengers like Infinity Stones, essentially ones that represent those 6 elements of the universe, in order to actually stand a chance in this celestial war? But now I need to connect the Infinity Stones to the X-Men, and in order to do that, we need to talk about what's going to happen in Spider-Man Brand New Day. In the apartment tour yesterday, I put together a theory based on the Easter eggs I found, because the number 224 was consistently repeated, and it was on his computer while he was researching jumping spiders and looking at different types of like genetic code and mixing it with technology and such and so forth to make his web shooters. But little did Sony Pictures know, not only do I have a background in science, but I have access to a best friend who's a physician's assistant, and she is infinitely smarter than I am. So after doing my own research and then with a little phone call with my best friend, we put together what 224 meant, and that is in reference to an RNF and a ring protein, and ring stands for really interesting new gene, literally. Now, as much as I absolutely hate to talk about this movie, I did unfortunately spend a little bit of time watching it for the very first time today, but Morbius is actually going to play a small, tiny role in this theory, because the way he splices his DNA with that DNA to create himself and the vampire genetics and all of that crap, that is going to be a similar idea for how Peter Parker is going to be splicing jumping spider DNA with his DNA to mutate it. But I also have another theory with the Morbius universe, because the end credit scene is definitely gonna play a role in Spider-Man Brand New Day. So that's why I hate to talk about it, because we have to talk about it, because the Vulture was seen in the end credit scene, and the sky broke apart in the exact same fashion as it did in Multiverse of Madness. And I actually never knew this because I never watched the film. But with this, the Vulture was not sent to Spider-Man's universe. He was cast away from Spider-Man's universe with Doctor Strange's spell, even though he technically, I thought from Homecoming, he originated in 616, but he was still cast out into Mobius's universe, which I theorize could be the nightmare universe that Mobius in Loki, we're going to get to this later, Loki and wherever the TVA is, that will also be answered in this video, he referenced a nightmare realm. But anyway, back to Peter Parker. So I became aware of something called a ligius, which is a labeling protein that essentially allows somebody to find damaged, unnecessary, or changed genes. This would be in reference to Peter Parker looking into his own genetic makeup, realizing, how did my genes change from the first spider bite to how are my genes changing now and why am I mutating now? That would likely be why he goes to talk to Bruce Banner and he's like, hey, what's happening? And that's when Bruce talks about his inhibitor. And in the background behind Bruce, you see something that I forget the name of, but it's the QTC. And essentially what this is figuring out how to map time space. But before I get ahead of myself, back to Peter Parker's genetic makeup, by looking back and realizing what his genetic makeup looked like before the mutate now and then before the first spider bite, he would realize he is genetically predisposed to actually develop this gene, that something's missing in his genetic makeup in comparison to other people, because what he actually went to the Hulk for, the database of genomic data, because the key here is that May is dead. No one else that Peter Parker is related to is alive. So I know it took me a little minute to get here, but promise we're still on track. No one else that is related to Peter Parker is alive, which means he has absolutely no reference to his own genetic makeup in order to make these scientific comparisons, to actually do the scientific research that he is doing. So he would have to go and get a database of genetic data. Where would he get that from? Except for Bruce Banner, who would be researching very similar things and would want access to that exact same research. Okay, before I get too sciencey, the Peter Parker theory is better explained in the actual theory video about that, so go over there, and I need to get back to the X-Men part of all of this. Because essentially, if Peter Parker is figuring out that some people are genetically predisposed to have powers, then why are they predisposed? Why don't they have powers? The X-Men gene is missing. Basically, he discovers that the X-Men gene is missing, and there are people that should be X-Men but are not, and he discovers the No More Mutant spell. In combination with the Hulk mapping space-time, they would hopefully find none other than Starlight Citadel, which in the comics is responsible for maintaining the multiverse. And that's where my mouse pad comes in, because Marvel sent me something where we have the Karagan Gate. The Karagan Gate is also known as the external gate. It connects two worlds, also known as Karaka and the Outer World. Outer World is also known as Avalon in the comics. You might recognize the name Avalon as Captain Avalon, who is also known as Captain Britain. We have a Captain Britain who happens to be traveling the multiverse with none other than the Watcher in Marvel's What If. This is where it gets good. In Avalon, they use incredibly similar magic to the Celtic magic seen in Asgard. But Otherworld is basically an interdimensional nexus, very similar to the omnipotent world that we saw as an interdimensional resting place within Thor: Love and Thunder. So essentially my theory is that Starlight Citadel saw that Wanda Maximoff was destined to destroy the multiverse. And yes, that's the theory, but she was actually going to destroy the multiverse. She needs to destroy the multiverse. That's where all of this is going. We actually need to bring Wanda back so she can destroy everything. So what Starlight City did, which by the way is the TVA. So if you're wondering, where's Starlight City? What is Starlight City? Starlight City is the TVA. We've already seen it. Because when we saw the TVA, we just saw one little piece. We looked out into that vast, technologically advanced world. What else could that possibly be? Also kind of looks like Starlight City, but anyway. They said no more mutants in a hope that when Wanda was born, her as a Nexus being would not be genetically made up to be a mutant. She was missing the X gene. But when she was exposed to the Mind Stone, that is what kick-started the gene anyway, which furthered the Celestial War, which furthered everybody learning more about the Infinity Stones, which was what Civil War was about. Everything is falling into place. But Wanda was never meant to be a mutant. They did the No More Mutants spell specifically so she would not be made a mutant. So when Peter Parker discovers that some people are genetically predisposed to this, they start thinking, who else is genetically predisposed? And none other than Wanda Maximoff's name comes up. Now, when it gets to the part of her destroying the multiverse, they got rid of her because they saw this predestined version where she has to destroy the multiverse, but in the end, so they can actually get all of the elements of the universe together, stop the Celestial War, handle the recreation of the multiverse overall, they need somebody with her power and skill level in order to do it. So that is why Steve Rogers, I believe, would have the most information in finding Wanda, and why I believe she could be in Starlight City, which is actually the TVA, which is where she was found in the comics, which is why Loki would be the second person to go to for information on where Wanda is, because when she was collapsed by the mountain, when she went there, assumably in the prophecy, she would have gone there to that mountain, to Mount Wundagore, to destroy the universe, the multiverse, whatever. They would have basically set a booby trap for her and been like, okay, you're gonna try and do that, and we're just gonna blip you right on over into a cell where you're just going to go into a deep, deep slumber in the TVA, aka Starlight Citadel. I think I keep saying city. but it's the Citadel, sorry. So Wanda's in the TVA, Loki's there, Steve Rogers knows where she is, and he's collecting all of the other Avengers like Infinity Stone elements in order to fight in this celestial war. Thanos was actually maybe not the worst guy in the world, and Peter Parker is going to have MJ as a villain and realize MJ is actually right, and the Avengers and Tony Stark caused a lot of damage in the world and something has to be done about it, and that's where all the spiders play in, and great power comes great responsibility, and if Peter Parker's powers are being mutated, his responsibility is going to be mutated, and if we're saying that MJ likes to dress on theme with what's going on and she's dressing in some like Art Deco 1960s, like it is giving so Spider Noir, especially with Tom Holland posting in color and black and white. It's too good to be true. All of the Spider-Men will all connect. So that is also why we're getting a Beyond the Spider-Verse next summer, and that is where Daredevil comes in and Kingpin comes in, and all of that story, you know, ties in together, because I also have another theory where the Kingpin is, you know, looking for the same family as the Kingpin from the Into the Multiverse or Spider-Verse, whatevers. But with that, follow me for all of your Marvel and Spider-Man shit. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.